Well, I don't think mental illness exists from a linguistic perspective because I think we haven't established properly what mental health, like non-illness would be, not ill. What is the normal? But I'm not discounting everyone's experiences and their struggles. But what I think is, this is a product of Eastern and Western spirituality, and Eastern spirituality, which has been essentially man grappling with his disordered mind forever, trying to meditate, trying to calm the mind inside of us. And Western religion, which has claimed that we're made in God's image, as in we're a finished product, therefore there's this status of normal, and that the pursuit of money, is man's greatest, man's dominion over the world is the greatest achievement. No, it's man's dominion over himself. So these are at odds, right? And what the problem here is it's been commoditized. So, I think the biggest lesson to look at in the modern world that will inform how mental health is going to play out and evolve is the car. Is that the pharmaceutical model and the psychopharmaceutical model and this kind of DSM-sponsored identity model of smiting children with quote, illnesses is going to end up destroying the world, much like carbon monoxide is, but we won't be able to change it because all the money's already there. So the question is, and then of course there are like forms of mental illness of actual brain. I mean, there are, injuries, illness, like mentally things we can quantify, but depression, anxiety, ADHD, BPD, all the things I talk about, from my experience, understanding being raised in this East and West silo, these are issues that all relate to my conditioned mind. They are all a direct product of information in, getting jumbled around with my specific recipe, and coming back out as dysfunction. They're not coming from nowhere. They're not brain chemistry. And, I'm really struggling, actually, because I've gone off my Lexapro because of all this talk of pills. And, I wonder, being my age, a lot of the talk that I'm talking about is at the beginning. After being on Lexapro for so long, I wonder, am I crying more because of it? Yes. Am I more bitchy? Yes. Would it be better for me to go back on? I genuinely don't know. What I do know is it's a broken modality in the bigger scheme, right? And all of the stuff I talk about is conceptual, it's linguistic, but it's not really talking about each individual's experience. It's talking about how they view the experience. And this mental illness thing, we are talking ourselves and labeling ourselves into exponentially making the problem worse because we're taking suffering and we're giving it all these names and pathologizing suffering to the point where people are burying themselves in their understanding of their suffering and believing that there are people out there that don't suffer. That's just not true. Life is about understanding and coming to terms with our suffering and managing a different relationship with it on all levels. Of everything you're saying, and their solution isn't because they're not approaching how to handle our suffering. They're approaching to define suffering, obscure the fact that everyone suffers, and sell us pills in the hopes that they can end it, and they're obviously failing. But I liked what you said because at root of this, just like with depression, the question isn't whether people are feeling depressed or whether they're feeling what they're feeling. The question is whether that's a proper response the way our minds, bodies, and consciousness works. Likewise, with anger. So BPD is essentially about saying you're irrationally angry. Well, I think it's a parallel to disordered parents, whatever. I don't I say narcissistic because that's mine, but it's I'm angry for a reason. And this was programmed into me because of their inability. My dad is a yoga meditation teacher, a narcissistic sociopath. Everything he did made everyone incredibly angry. And he told me outright, he would say this to my mother, to my sister, my mother didn't have to deal with it. She got divorced from him. Come back to me when you're not angry. I'd only see him 5 hours a week. Well, then I would be angry all week. And then that anger turned to rage. And then all of a sudden, where does Chris have this anger issue? My mother's beating me for wetting the bed. 2 narcissists for parents. My dad marries a malignant narcissist. My mom marries a guy with Asperger's that she places in between me and her so that any anger that I have, he then literally physically confronts me because he wasn't there for all of this other stuff. And he just sees me as an extension of my father, who he hates as well. It's also crazy, but yeah, where was my anger coming from? That's BPD. Okay, well, it's this brain chemistry thing and BPD thing. Say it's like a broken arm, in this brain chemistry thing. It'd be like saying bone density for a broken arm. Yeah, you're having a bone density issue where your arm's been broken, but it didn't exist before somebody came over here and snapped your arm. It's also crazy But it fits into the framework of narcissistic personality disorder and the kind of baby boomers and beyond and their inability to take responsibility for what their parenting has done to us. Because they've been parenting us like all the parents before, which is to say abuse. The only problem is we have awareness of what abuse looks like. We're all connected, and it's killing our brains because they couldn't handle their own trauma. So, all of this is trapped in a broken authority system of people who won't take responsibility, and then profit motive. And what is the intent? The intent is to sell us pills and make money, which means they can't make money unless we're broken. So their true aim is to convince us we're broken. It's not to alleviate suffering. It's to convince us that they have a name for our specific suffering and that they have a pill that can fix it. This is all ridiculous. Because everybody's suffering is different, but there's no way they can make a pill for everybody. So what they look at is similarities instead of differences. It's all backwards. All this talking I'm doing, this is me people-pleasing my therapist. This is 20 years, 25 years of me trying to give therapists a good show because, like the problem was my parents. I didn't know that. It was like we talk about depression, but it's like you have this all figured out. It's like, yeah, it's all figured out, but this intractable problems that really didn't even get started talking about, really. 2004 was the first time narcissism was thrown into the conversation, and that changed everything. But it's just like, they threw me some bones and made some good discoveries with me, but it's like most of the time it was just me performing, kind of, practicing the act I do now. Literally. It's like this is me talking to a therapist in a lot of ways, just like it's me in AA in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's not that, and it's not even like this therapy thing. I've liked most of my therapists. I wouldn't keep going to them. There were a couple I didn't like that I kept going to just because I was in such a bad place. Switching therapists wasn't in my capabilities. But I've liked most of them. But liking them and kind of like thinking they've done a good job, especially in light of this diagnosing stuff. It's like, going in there and just chit-chatting and making them feel good about their job, knowing they have to then diagnose me and they're sending like bullshit to my insurance company. It's a big mess. I genuinely, any sane culture would allow us to sue the fuck out of them. This is a class action suit in any sane culture that has any sort of protection services going on to consumers and human beings about their health and what they're being told and what they're being sold. But we clearly don't live in a culture that values humans. Capitalism. We value capital, and our mental health is being sacrificed in multiple ways at the altar of capitalism. Therapists are cops. I've been saying it for a while, they are part of a broken modality, and even the ones that are trying to do good, they're not. All cops are bastards. All therapists are liars. The insurance company and Big Pharma has made you so. I'm sorry. That's just the reality, therapist. You are all liars, and you know it. I don't like saying that. I don't like it being true. I wish you weren't liars. I wish you weren't also masking all the time. I wish you could actually show us your emotions, your experience. Maybe you cry once in a while in that room. Show us that you fucking care. Because the mask of not caring and the mask of kind of formality and these layers of kind of your diploma behind us, all this bullshit conditioning us to believe you're an authority figure, healing down on us, that doesn't actually work. Because there's no such thing as healed. And these therapists certainly aren't healed. When I see them admitting to this shit online openly, it's a form of like psychic destruction of a lot of these children who rely on therapy and believe in it to have therapists anonymously admitting all this bullshit in public. It's not responsible to do that either. Yeah, it's a structural problem. The institution is broken. The way they're taught to apply therapy is broken. What we're dealing with is a culture that's broken. They're not going inward, talking about Jung and Freud. They're dealing with people who can't live, who can't exist under the weight of capitalism, right? So, and it's not to say it doesn't help some people. Cops get cats out of trees. That's what all these people saying, but it helped me. Yeah, cops get cats out of trees. Because we don't really have any idea what to expect proportionately. So if somebody goes in there and they're miserable and it helps them 5%, they're going to say it helped them. But is the goal to be like a little less miserable? I genuinely asking what the goal is, and that's undefined. And all of it, it's the Jiddisch Krishnamurti quote, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And therapy, as it's structured, as it's taught at an academic level, is largely about fitting people back into that broken society. And what therapists are taught and what they actually do are two separate things. And every one of them will tell you that because they are not going inward. This is not psychoanalysis as it was kind of developed like 80 years ago. This is people freaking the fuck out because our government has crumbled. All of our institutions have crumbled. The world has changed so fast and so rapidly at a technological level that it's chaos. People are poor. They can't afford anything. There's no jobs. The world is kind of crumbling. And for those of us that aren't lost in cognitive dissonance, it's a little hard for us to deal with. Because the more I think about what the normal that they're basing all of this off of, it's cognitive dissonance. It's the ability to look around at the world and feel nothing. See nothing, see no evil, hear no evil. It's la, 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 la. Oh yeah, your mental health's great. But if you open your eyes up and go, hey, wait a minute, like this is so much suffering, needless suffering. Everyone suffers, but we have created all of these layers, and it's just literally insane. I mean, it's quite literally insane. The way we pay bills, the way we set appointments. I mean, think of how much stress goes into just getting to a therapist and managing appointments. And it's all about them. You go sit in the fucking waiting room. You get shortchanged. You know, I mean, when I do it, it's like I try to have no time limits. I try to be available at all times, you know, obviously to a point. But it's like they want to like pretend it's this end all be all and also place all these like unneeded burdens on us, put all these kind of layers of formality that kind of obscure the reality that this is just a paid friendship. You can either connect with me and help me feel better about myself, or you can't. And no degree, no nothing can change that simple fact. So it like everything, it's about managing expectations in a world that's changed, and finding order in chaos.